Okay, so good evening and welcome to tonight's online event hosted by Wyndham City Sustainability Team and Libraries. My name is Andrea Fernandez. I'm a Sustainability Officer. So Wyndham City Council recognizes Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as the first peoples of Australia. We acknowledge the Bunurong and Wadawurrung peoples as traditional owners of the lands on which Wyndham City operates. The Wadawurrung and Bunurong peoples have and always will belong to the Werribee River, creeks, stacks, hills, and red clay of this country. We pay respect to their ancestors and elders who will always have and always will care for country and community today and for future generations. Thank you all for coming to this exciting event where we are launching the My Home Energy and Water Efficiency Kit. This toolkit is designed to help residents to identify issues that are affecting their energy and water efficiency of their home. I'm really excited about this event, and to start with, I would like to present and introduce Lucinda Flynn, which is our presenter today. She's a highly experienced residential energy efficiency assessor who has helped hundreds of homes to lower their energy bills and improve their home's comfort. She's also a teacher and presenter in this field and loves to help people understanding how they can improve their home's energy efficiency in simple and low-cost ways. So Lucinda, all over to you, and please welcome.
Hello, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay? It's a great pleasure to be here tonight. Thanks all for making the time to join us and learn hopefully a bit about your homes and about how these new water and energy efficiency kits will be able to help you become more comfortable. That's a really big passion of mine. I'll get started with my presentation, but I do want to invite you to ask questions.
My name is Lucinda, and I work as... This isn't working. I work as a home energy efficiency assessor. So pretty much what that means is that I go to people's houses and help them work out what they can do to become more comfortable and more energy efficient in their homes. And so what we're going to do today is we're launching the new home energy and water efficiency kits that you'll all be able to borrow from the library. And in order to give that a bit more context, I suppose, we're going to be talking a little bit about what type of aspects of your building shell impact on how comfortable you can be and how much energy you're using and the cost of your bills. We'll talk about which parts of the kit you can use specifically to help work out some solutions for your building shell. And then the second part is that we'll talk about appliances, how to choose efficient appliances, and then how to use the toolkit to measure, the energy that's being used and work out ways to use those appliances more efficiently. So to end up with is what we call an energy efficient home, and that's one where the building shell that I mentioned a moment ago is constructed so well, or you've done so many upgrades to it that it's comfortable a lot of the time without even needing active heating and cooling. So that means it just stays at a much more even temperature. And it also means that when you do finally need to put on the heating, which you surely still will, in the middle of winter, it means that heating is going to heat up quickly. It's going to bring you to temperature and then just cycle on and off gently, and it won't cost as much to run. So that's what we want to aim for, and that's the purpose of these kits, is to help you identify the things in your home that you can easily do and hopefully be more comfortable this winter. A couple of things just to put this whole idea in context. One is that when I do an energy assessment, I use a tool called the scorecard, and it gives a rating to a house that is a cost rating. So it's a lot like if you get a fridge, it will tell you how many dollars that fridge will cost per year to run. And the average Victorian house is actually a 3-star house, which costs $1,800 roughly per year to run just the heating, cooling, hot water and lighting. And if we can identify things in that home that could bring it up to the equivalent of a 6-star house, which I think you can do with good choices of appliances and some building improvements, you could be saving $1,000 a month. So when we talk about a home that is energy efficient, it's not just about comfort, it's actually a really tangible possible cost saving that you could have. And there's one more thing that I want to mention to put it all in context, which is just that in Victoria, usually at least half of our energy is used for heating. So whatever we can do to make our homes hold the heat better and not need as much heating, and the choices we can make to use more efficient heating, that's going to have the biggest impact on our costs. So when we talk about either our buildings or our appliances, we usually do have a pretty big focus on heating. So let's get started with the building shell. So I'll talk about some of the building shell aspects, and then I'll explain how you can use the kit to look at your building shell. And then if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. So one of my favourite quotes, which really relates to the building shell, is the cheapest energy is the energy you don't use. And that's referring to if you have a building envelope or a building shell that is really good at keeping heat, your nice warmth in winter, and it's really good at keeping summer sun out, that just means you're not using energy in the first place. So you don't need to worry so much about, getting a better deal every year. If you can stop using that energy, that's a really big saving right there. These two pictures show the amount of heat that you can lose through the building shell in winter and gain through it in summer, and they're really significant amounts. So imagine if you could do a little bit using this kit, if you could identify things that you can do in all of those areas, the insulation, the drafts, the windows, and reduce the amount of heat you're losing, that means that you're potentially saving a lot of money by not using it. So draft proofing is probably the easiest place to start. And there's a lot of places that we typically have drafts. Houses are different depending on how old they are, and the older your home is, the more draft it's probably going to have, especially if it's built before 2003, which is when the sort of energy efficiency standards came into the building code. Before that, it was really, up to builders to decide what they did with our houses, and they weren't required to put in energy efficiency measures like, insulation. So after 2003, those energy efficiency measures got better. But yeah, what you can do, because all of your houses will be a different age and everyone's drafts are different, is look up Sustainability Victoria drafts, and they have a list there of all of the drafts and how to improve them. There's too many to go through here, but I will just talk through a couple of the main ones and what you could do. So an open chimney is actually the biggest, most impactful draft that you can have. So if anyone has an open fireplace or an open chimney, it's super important to seal that off. And it can be any type of physical block. There are professional chimney seal products such as the ones that you can see on the screen. One is made by a local Melbourne company, EcoMaster. That's the one on the left, which is a really simple DIY one to put in. The main thing is that you're blocking the hole. So you can even technically put a pillow up your chimney. The main thing is you want to have something hanging there or sitting there to let you know that it is blocked, because otherwise you don't want anyone lighting a fire and, filling the house full of smoke. There are also free chimney seals under the Victorian Energy Upgrades program. The important thing with that, though, is to make sure that they are filling the hole in the chimney, because they don't always install the right size. So if you do get that done, just double check that it is filling the gap. there's plenty of drafts that you can have around doors and windows, and they can be external doors. They might be at the bottom of the door. They might be around the sides and the top of the door. The top left-hand picture shows an internal door. Sometimes you want to seal the bottom of an internal door if there's a really drafty area behind it. And there's also window seals that you might be doing. Gaps and cracks, we've pretty much all got plenty of these. Even brand new houses can have these. For example, where plumbing or electrical work has been done and holes drilled into the wall, and then the holes are not always blocked up very well. So those wall vents, skirting gaps, and gaps under door frames are really common. Those you can fill with some filler rod, which is that white sort of circular thing. It's just actually a piece of foam that you can put into the gap and then use a caulking gun to caulk over the top of it. What else? We've got unsealed exhaust fans. That's another really common one. The exhaust fan is just a hole in the ceiling, and there's an easy fix for that. This item on the right hand side just goes over the top of the fan, and that's also free under the Victorian Energy Upgrades program. The one exception is this one on the left. That is a heat lamp, and you can't cover those just because of the amount of heat they generate. Then the final one really is only in older houses, but if you have any of these, they're really worth sealing up, which is an open skylight or a permanently vented window, which could be a louver or it could be mesh. And you can seal them up with clear acrylic or plastic or even cardboard, depending on what your budget is and what you're aiming at. A draft seal is just a physical seal, so it doesn't matter as long as you're stopping the air moving through. A quick note, just if anyone still has an indoor gas or wood heater, it's probably better not to draft seal a room that has those, purely because of the risk of there being things emitted into the air that you really don't want to be breathing. So that's my only thing, is if you have one of those, make sure you get a CO2, a carbon monoxide monitor, and don't completely seal it. Ceiling insulation. Then I've just got a few slides on this, and the key things really to know about ceiling insulation, or any kind of insulation, is that R stands for resistance to heat transfer. So when you talk about ceiling or wall or underfloor insulation, it will always be given an R value. If you're talking about ceiling insulation, you're probably aiming for about R5 if you're building to current building standards. And you also really want a very even coverage without any gaps. And this image shows why the gaps are a problem. See here, there's 5% gaps in the total coverage of the insulation, and it actually halves the value. So say if you've got a new build or a fairly new house and it started off with R4 insulation, but you've ended up with just 5% gaps, just a tiny bit, it's only working at just over R2. So that's pretty significant. And these pictures show how common that can be, even in a brand new house. These roof spaces look to me like new builds because they're so clean. Usually roof spaces are a lot more dirty. And this shows that the insulation has all been laid, and then a tradie has come in to install, say, a light or a fan, and they've moved all the insulation aside and left it. So that's a problem, and it's a really great one to identify if you can. And there is a way you can do that with the kit, and I'll show you that shortly. With wall and underfloor insulation, you don't have to take all your plaster off the walls inside to put wall insulation into an older house. You can just drill holes into the weatherboard or into the brick veneer or double brick and pump it in with this long sort of reverse vacuum hose. And the picture on the bottom right shows if you did that and then Well, this is somebody who then took off the plaster to renovate a bathroom, and you can see where that insulation is. So it's actually a pretty good effect and will make a massive difference to how comfortable your home is. And then the final type of insulation is underfloor insulation, which isn't needed for everybody. It's more important when you might live in a house that has quite a high underfloor with a lot of airflow, say if it's not closed at the sides, and perhaps if you haven't got any other floor covering besides floorboards between you and outside. That then makes underfloor insulation really important. Now, windows are the final factor in the building shell. So we've looked at drafts, the different kinds of insulation, and windows. And windows is actually a big one where you've got quite a lot of options for improvement. There's a lot more ways to help your windows work better than just replacing everything with double glazing. So hopefully that's good news. You can do lots of really cheap things, in fact. So if you want to get started really quick, it has gotten cold already this winter, and if you just want to do something pretty simple, then a window covering is a fantastic place to start. What you want with a window covering is to reduce airflow across the glass, and so whatever you put on your window as a covering, if you can always come back to that idea and keep that in mind, then that's going to have the biggest impact. So the picture on the left just shows a heavy lined curtain, and it actually has an invisible pelmet on top of it that you can't see. An invisible pelmet you can also see on the right hand picture at the top. You'll see it's a little strip that goes between the wall or the window frame and the curtain, and it just stops air moving up and down behind that curtain. And the middle image shows a honeycomb blind. Well, actually there's two there. There's one installed inside the window reveal, giving a really nice tight fit, and it's trapping air inside the honeycomb cells. And they also put another honeycomb blind over the top, so it's sort of a double whammy, and that's a fantastic effect. Honeycomb blinds are fairly cheap. You can buy them from Spotlight or IKEA and put them in yourself. So that's a good low-cost way to begin. And a couple more options that are good for reducing the heat moving through the windows are Roman blinds, because they have a pelmet built into them. Lined are better. Anything that's a bit thicker and lined is better. And then this other image is one where there's a curtain hung on a ceiling track. And in this case, the ceiling acts as the pelmet. So that's another good option. With glazing, what you're aiming at is to add an air gap between two panes of something. So the pane can, the original window is going to be glass, but what the other panel is up for grabs a bit, and there's quite a lot of options from very cheap, for example, putting bubble wrap on your windows. By putting bubble wrap up, you're introducing an air gap in all the bubbles, and it actually makes a big difference. It may not be the prettiest thing, but if you just want to get stuck in and make your home warmer, or if you live in a rental and you can't do many other things to the house, it's a perfectly good way to reduce the heat being lost. The picture at the bottom shows a product called Clear Comfort, and there's a few different brand names of this product, but what it is, you get a double-sided tape and stick it around the window frame, not the glass, but the frame of the window, and you get this sort of cellophane-y, plasticky stuff, a thin film, that you stick onto the double-sided tape, and you grab a hairdryer and you shrink it, and the plastic film shrinks really tight like a drum. It becomes completely invisible, and then you trim off all the edge bits. So what you've done is you've introduced an air gap between your original window and this Clear Comfort, which has a very good thermal effect. It's also a really cheap thing to do. I think it's about $100 for enough for 10 windows. So it's a a brilliant way to start. Even if you want to end up getting a more permanent solution like double glazing, this one's a good one to get you through the first winter, and you'll really be able to see what a difference it would make as well. Another low cost option, there's a link there which I forgot to send through to Anita before, but you'll be able to access these slides and you can have a look. It's an article by an organisation called Renew, where somebody was living in a rental and wanted to improve their windows, but didn't, you know, obviously couldn't do anything long term to them. So she created these removable frames out of fly screen edgings with clear plastic. So she's put them together and put them into the window reveal. So again, she's created an air gap. And if you can see up here, she's also put honeycomb blinds inside the window reveal. So, and this window has that removable panel in it. It might sound like it will be really ugly, but I actually think it looks pretty good if you're thinking of a, you know, a rental and a low cost option. Okay, on to further options for windows. One is to get your own clear acrylic and screw it into the timber window frames. Or this image on the left is another clear acrylic option, but attached with magnetic fastenings. Then there's professional secondary glazing companies where people come in and do all the work for you and put up a second panel. Then we're moving into actual double glazing. And what that refers to is a double panel of glass that's sealed around the edges. That's the difference between actual double glazing. So this company, Thermawood, offer double glazing retrofit into existing timber frames. They specialise in heritage. So if you have, you know, beautiful stained glass windows, things like that, they can do that, or sash windows, and they retrofit a brand new piece of double glazing in there. So you can have argon fill and low E coating and all of those fancy things. It's more expensive than those other options, but it's a lot less than complete replacement. And then of course, the final option, the most expensive, is ripping out your windows and your frames and putting brand new ones in. If you do that, just try to avoid aluminium frames if you can. The reason being that this top green arrow shows a single glazed timber framed window, and if you swap that for a double glazed aluminium frame window, you're only getting quite a small benefit because you're improving the glass but unimproving the frame, so to speak. So if you can go from there to say here, which is the double glaze with a timber or UPVC frame, you're getting a much better benefit, and it's quite an expensive job to do. So I feel like if you're going to do it, you may as well go for the best frames. Okay, now let's get into the fun stuff, which is how to use the kit that you'll be able to borrow to find out these kind of things from the building shell. Now, probably the most exciting gadget in this kit is the FLIR thermal imaging camera. And what it does, when you shine it on things, it will show you differences in the heat of things. So the very first thing you need to do really is just get a handle of what it's doing. And I love this picture of Morris from EcoMaster. He's just shining it on himself. You can shine it on the cat or the dog or your kids to get an idea of what it looks like when you shine it on something really warm. In that picture of Morris, you can see he's really warm, and then around him it's purple. That indicates cold. And that picture also explains another thing about these cameras, is that if the way they work is if where you're shining it has not so much difference in the degree of temperature, there'll be a whole range of colours. But if you get something very warm in there, it'll make everything else comparatively colder. So you do need to spend a bit of time getting used to how it separates out those colours. Always remembering that yellow or down to white and orange are warm things, and purple, blue are cold things. There are, by the way, in the kits, there are good guides on how to use all of these things. So this is me just trying to give you a bit of a visual on how that works. But take some time getting to know it first so that you understand what it's telling you. The next thing you want to do is prepare your home to get the best result. And the reason that's important is because what you're trying to locate with this thermal camera is differences between hot things and cold things. For example, drafts, cold drafts that are coming in winter. And so one of the things you can do to help is, it's coming into winter, so it's a good time, wait for a nice chilly morning and turn up the heating in the whole house as warm as you can and get it really warm. That's one thing. You've made as a big possible difference as between the outside temperature and the inside temperature. Then what you want to do is depressurize your home. And what I mean by that is, if you turn on your range hood and your bathroom exhaust fans and anything that you can that's actually sucking air out of your house, then the house, that air needs to be replaced. So what will happen is it will pull air in through all of the drafty spots. And this then makes it really easy to find those drafts with the camera. And this picture, see on this right picture here, if you depressurize your home and it's warm inside and cold outside, this is what you'll find. There's a big gap under this door. There are gaps around the side of the door, the perimeter, the sides and the top. And there's a gap here, which I think is the mail slot. This one here is a little different because I think that's actually the window in the door. And I've got another slide talking about windows, but this just shows you how this camera might look if you're looking at a drafty door. The reason I've added this picture on the left is because another approach to it is that you can make your home really warm inside and then go outside and have a look at where the heat is coming through. To me, it's not as useful. It's a much sort of a bigger picture view, and I find the inside one better. But you can do both. You might as well if you've got the camera, right? Have a play with both of them. Here's some examples of the drafts. Well, we already showed this one where there's a big draft under the door and around the sides and the mail slot. This one here is a chimney. This one is French doors, and you know, doors, when they're timber doors especially, they move and they warp, and you can often end up with a gap in part of it and not the other part. So this is quite a useful way to figure out what's going on. And here's another example here of a draft on a skirting board. Okay, windows. Windows, now a skylight is pretty much always a real weak point of a house. And this picture says it all really, doesn't it? It's nice and warm everywhere, except the skylight is freezing cold. So I haven't actually said what to do about that, but one weakness of skylights is often they might be a hole in your ceiling that goes up just to the skylight panel, and that's the only thing separating you from outside. So one thing you can do is just put a ceiling level layer of clear acrylic, and that would reduce that heat transfer quite a bit. This picture on the right shows a before and an after. So this is, the top part is before with a window that is not very thermally efficient. And then this one down here is after they've put that film on, the really cheap stuff that I showed you, the Clear Comfort. You can see that it's reduced the amount of coldness coming through that window. It hasn't got rid of it, but if you had a picture that then also had, say, a nice heavy curtain on it, you wouldn't see that amount of purple there because it would have made a big difference. Here's another slide, and this one's focused on insulation in various places. So the top one here, this is a ceiling, and the likely problem here, I'd say, is that somebody's installed something in that spot, and they've pulled that bit of insulation out of the way, and there's also a little missing bit here. But the rest looks okay. So it could be for that house that they just need to get somebody to get up there and put those bits of insulation back. This middle one shows some just gaps. Again, it looks like the insulation's mostly okay, but there's just some missing bits. This one shows a wall that seems to have a portion uninsulated. And then this one down the bottom, some thermal cameras, I'm not sure whether yours does, some of them have a function where they do a regular picture next to the thermal picture. And this is an example of one of those. So this is the same spot, but this is a regular picture, and that's the thermal picture. And it shows that where this light is, the insulation has been moved away completely. And that's really common with downlights. There are a couple of good YouTube guides that I found just where people are doing what you will be doing. They're walking around their homes with a thermal imaging camera and using them to figure out where there's drafts and then working out how to seal them. And they actually go through what they've done to fix up those parts of their home. I also really want to mention, though, what you can do, because I know how many people are wanting to get these kits, and there's not enough for everybody. So what I want to do is just say it's okay if you can't get one straight away, because there's a whole bunch of things you can do to get started. And then once you get the kit, you can keep going. But there's no reason you can't look for your own drafts in the meantime. How can you do that? Well, the first one is, well, this one is a good example where you just simply look for drafts. If you can see light through a door bottom or through a wall vent, that is a draft. So get out your filler rod and your caulking gun, and you can seal that up. When you get the thermal imaging camera, sure, you can go around again and maybe find some that are harder to spot, but that will get you going. The other thing is here, someone's just basically feeling for drafts, and that works really well on a cold, windy day. You can use a candle where you just walk around and see which way the candle blows, and the same with insulation. Sorry, an incense stick. Especially on a cold, windy day, if you walk around with an incense stick and hold it up to wherever you think there might be a draft, that smoke will blow wherever the air is coming from. And you can use these in the same way as, you know, how I said to prepare the home by making it warm inside and cold outside and then depressurizing it. That will make these ones work better as well, because you'll have air actually rushing in to fill the space that the exhaust fans have moved away. Now, I'm going to, let me see if there's any questions. The filler. So the filler is called filler rod, and it's, so rod as in R-O-D. It's just from a hardware store, and you can buy it in all different widths. So if you've got big gaps, you might get a nice fat piece. It's foam. It's basically foam in tubes. You can get it in all different sizes to match whatever gap you have. And the reason that you use filler rod with a caulking gun is just that if you've had a hole and you've tried to fill it up with a caulking gun, if there's nothing to hold that in, sometimes the cork just falls through and you end up just keeping on filling and filling and filling and nothing's holding. So if you put the filler rod in first and then the cork over the top, that's what holds it in place. So hopefully that answers that question. Let me know if there's any more.
Hi, Lucinda. Sorry, there was another question. I did combine a few in the background here, but it was just how can you find a good sealing insulation product?
I'm just going to check. I've just seen a question in the chat, which is how to find a good ceiling insulation product and installer. I'm not sure whether I'm allowed to mention companies. Am I? Is that? Can you give me a heads up if that's okay?
So council can't obviously recommend,
I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
Okay, so
look, I will say that there is a company in Melbourne that specialises in just insulation. They do ceilings, blow-in wall insulation and underfloor insulation, and I think that they're the only blow-in wall insulation company, and they're called EnviroFlex. And pretty much every energy assessor I know refers people to them, and also all of the government supported or council supported contracts always use them because they're the only company that has full-time staff, so they're all very well trained, and they're not the cheapest option, but you know that you're going to get a job done well. So that's who I'd recommend for installing insulation. If you want to give it a go yourself, it is legally you're allowed to put in your own insulation. It's just that there are quite a lot of safety issues, so it's really important that you know what you're doing. You know, falling off ladders being the most basic one. But yeah, let me know if there's any other questions. I'm just going to go back to the Q&A and we can keep talking through the appliances. Oh, here we go. So I'm thinking somebody said about how draft proofing affects air circulation and oxygen concentration. I'm guessing that's about draft proofing. Now, that's a really good question, and draft proofing is, so drafts and ventilation are essentially the same thing. They're the movement of air, but the difference is that draft is uncontrolled and it impacts us all the time, whether or not it's beneficial or not, whereas ventilation is when you've got controlled ventilation of air, which is really important. So when you live in an old drafty house and you start to seal up gaps, it is true that sometimes you haven't got what you need in place to stop getting condensation, because you've had, and I say this from experience, we live in a 70s house and we used to be able to dry our clothes inside and all this stuff that we could never do now because we've sealed up all the gaps. So what you need to do is definitely draft proof, but also put attention on making sure you have good ventilation for your home, you have a good strong range hood, you have good exhaust fans for the bathroom that will actually extract the amount of air that you need them to. And also habits. Change habits, like if you draft proof your home, you can't dry clothes inside anymore unless you get a dehumidifier, and that dehumidifier will help pull all the moisture out of the air. So hopefully that's answered that one. And so there's one about double glazed windows. There is a rubber kind of seal installers use. I don't know the answer to that. Do you mean the rubber that is used to seal the two panels of of glazing, or do you mean a more like a draft seal for the window? Maybe if you can give a little bit more information, then I can answer that. And Paula has asked about insulation, whether the best product is blow-in, bats or foam. For a ceiling, bats is always best just because it's solid, it's not going to move around so much. For a wall, unless you're pulling your plaster off, then blow-in is just better because you can do it without even going into the house. They can do it from outside, so it's just way easier. But if you are pulling your wall plaster off, then bats is great. Foam, it is not really used that much to my knowledge. The underfloor insulation that I know is polyester underfloor bats, and you just, for underfloor, you need to make sure you're choosing an underfloor insulation because it's a bit more rigid. You don't want to be putting ceiling insulation under the floor because it might sag. Hopefully that's answered those questions. And what I might do is keep going with some appliances. In the meantime, I'm not sure how I'm going to manage later, if you can give me any tips, because I can't use the headphones without getting a very long delay. So if you can think of anything, maybe put it in the chat to give me a tip on what to do. But I'll keep going with the appliances. And everyone feel free to keep putting in questions. I'll keep answering them as I can, and we've got a bit of time at the end as well. Okay. Oh, well, we just did that bit, so I'll keep going. Appliances. So there's two main parts to your building. There's the building shell, which we've just talked about, and how important it is to make it better at keeping your warmth in winter and the heat out in summer. The other part is making good choices in appliances, but not only that, using them well and keeping using them in a way that they're not going to be using a lot of energy and costing you a lot of money. So we'll talk through some of the main ones, which will be heating, hot water, and plug-in appliances. I wasn't going to talk about cooling for two reasons, partly because we're about to go into winter, but also because our cooling costs in Victoria are actually very small. They're usually only a few % of our annual bill. And so it's just not as relevant now. I mean, ceiling fans are always great, and who knows, we might do another session coming into summer and we can talk more about that. Oh, I've just noticed there's another question recommending something to block the evaporative cooling vents to stop heat loss. Dave, that's a great spot there, because you're right, evaporative cooling vents do allow a lot of your warm air to just travel up through the vents and get lost outside. There are free covers under the Victorian Energy Upgrade Scheme, so you can certainly get them put on. The main thing is to make sure they put the right size on the actual ceiling vent, because I have seen large rectangular ceiling vents that have a small square cover on them, which sort of defeats the purpose because it's only covering half of that vent. So make sure they're only putting ones on that actually fit the size. Hope that helps. All right, let's keep going with appliances. Active heating, like I said, it's usually at least half of our costs and sometimes up to 80% of the annual cost that a home has per year. This is a chart from Sustainability Victoria that has a lot of really great comparison charts if you're interested to see how your kind of heating compares to other kinds. And it shows the comparative costs per year to heat a small room, or a medium room, I should say, 30 metres squared, or to heat a medium house, 160 metres squared. So in both of those instances, you can see that reverse cycle air conditioning, whether it's ducted or individual, is actually your cheapest way to heat in both instances. There's nothing else that can meet the energy efficiency of a reverse cycle air conditioner. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about reverse cycle air conditioners. Now, this unit here, that's what I'm talking about. To make it complicated, they are named various different things, including a split system. The reason they're called a split system is because they're split into two bits. One bit's inside and one bit is outside. They're called reverse cycle air conditioners because they both cool and heat. They are also called heat pumps, and heat pump is the actual technology that they use to do what they do. And they're also sometimes called inverters. And that's also a kind of technology. So most modern reverse cycle air conditioners are inverter models, which is just about the way they can cycle on gently and cycle off without big changes. And this makes them a lot less blowy and just more comfortable. Why are they so efficient? This is, to me, this is really key, because everything we do, every choice we make in our homes in terms of heating and even hot water heating, heat pumps are going to come up at every turn. There's the reverse cycle air conditioners are heat pumps, and hot water heat pumps are heat pumps as well. Why are they so efficient? The reason is because they are not using energy to create heat. Instead, they're using energy to collect heat from outside air and move it in, or in summer to collect heat from the inside air and move it out. So because they're only moving, they're pumping heat from one place to another, they can do that way more efficiently. And for example, a new reverse cycle air conditioner on the wall might use 1 unit or 1 kilowatt of electricity and give you maybe 4.5 kilowatts of heat energy, which is a massive, massive efficiency, and nothing else can beat them. If you don't like the look of air conditioners on the wall, then there are other options. You can have what's called a ceiling cassette, where it's lodged in the ceiling. You can have a floor-mounted unit that you might be able to tuck away somewhere. You can have one installed in a bulkhead if you're doing a bit of renovation. And another thing I want to mention is the multi-split, which is where you have one large outdoor condenser unit. This is the one that draws air in and circulates it through the refrigerant coils. But it can be attached to numerous indoor header units that could be different configurations. The beauty of this is that you only have one outdoor unit. So instead of having 6 of these and 6 indoor ones, you have one outdoor, and you still need the ones indoors, but it can be a better option for some people. Some other things that are really important though is like reverse cycle air conditioning is a super, super efficient way to heat. However, there's other things you can do to complement that, or perhaps more important even is it's so common that there's different people in a home that feel heat differently. For example, you might say, look, I'm fine, but my partner's always cold. And so what do you do then? Do you turn the temperature up for the whole house, or what do you do? What I would suggest is you get some personal heating devices and use them to try and, help boost that person who's a bit chilly. I've got a daughter who's always cold, so she has her own personal rug, heated rug, and whenever we're all sitting around, she's got that on and she's happy, and we're happy, because if it was up to her temperature inside, we'd be roasting. So they're a really great option, and they come in all types. This is one of my favorites, this one here. It's a heated seat pad, which is a fantastic idea for a desk, because often you get cold because you're sitting, but if you're rugged up and you're sitting on a nice warm heated pad, it can be pretty comfy. Another option is another kind of electric plug-in heater, which is called a far infrared heater. Now the way they work is different to a typical plug-in heater. The standard plug-in heater, like an oil-filled or a blower heater, they're just using energy to convert to heat and trying to heat all the air in a room, whereas a far infrared heater acts like the sun, and it creates radiant heat that will heat whatever those rays hit. And the best way I can describe it is, imagine it's a cold winter's day, but the sun's shining, and you go out and you sit on your garden, on the deck in the sun, and the air's actually really cold, but you feel nice because that solar radiation is hitting you. That's what a far infrared heater does. And because it's not trying to heat all the air in the room, it can heat you much more effectively. There's little portable ones like this. There's these panels that you can mount. That one's just mounted over a desk, but they can be mounted over beds or over kitchen tables or couches or anywhere you like, really. They're just a cheaper plug-in option. That means that you can complement whatever other heating you have. And then some efficient heating tips. One is just to set the thermostat for winter. It should still feel like winter, but just not as uncomfortable. The picture shows really dirty air conditioner filters. That's a really important one, because you might be thinking your air conditioner, your reverse cycle air conditioner, is not working. It might actually just be that it can't pull air through the filters because they're so clogged with dust. And I see that all the time in houses. So that's a really important one, just to get them out and wash them with some warm soapy water, put them back in, and you're ready to go. It's a really simple job to do. You don't need to pay anyone to do it. Other things are just like heating by smaller zones, keeping your appliances working well, and anything you've done to improve your building is going to also help your heating work better, because it's not having to work as hard. Okay, let me just quickly check the comments in case there's any questions around. I'm reading back about the double glazed window and a rubber seal that installers use. Seals around the glass outside. Timber windows. I might try and answer that one later, because I'm still not sure what you mean, but what I could suggest is there's a company called EcoMaster who specialise in draft proofing products, and they have a lot of really good free videos that you can look at. So what I might perhaps suggest is that you look up their website and try and identify the kind of doors or windows that you're talking about, and see if you can find them. And they've probably got a draft sealing kit that will suit that, and so therefore you'll figure out what it is and what it's called. There are also professional draft proofing people that actually come and seal up your windows and doors. Now, Anne-Marie has asked about a heat pump hot water system, which I'll answer in a moment, Anne-Marie, once we finish this little section. So if you can hold that thought, that'd be great. And do we need to leave a gap between a downlight and ceiling insulation? Yes, so that is one of the problems with downlights, is that generally that's what creates the gaps in the ceiling insulation. So there's a couple of things you can do. One is to add downlight covers, and then you can fix the insulation up around those safely. They're fire retardant downlight covers, and in any good insulation company should be able to supply those and put them on while they're doing the insulation job. And the other option is to replace the downlights with new downlights that have what's called an IC4 rating. IC4 stands for being safe to have insulation right around them. So that's sort of the longer term better option if you can do that. We've just got a question about heating. Central ducted gas heating Brivus. Is that more effective, or multiple units of inverter heating turning on at the same time? So there's a couple of things I'd like to say about that. The first one is you can get ducted reverse cycle air conditioning. So that's the same as the individual units that we showed the picture of, but it's ducted just like a gas ducted heating system. But it's not gas, it's electric, and it's reverse cycle, so you get heating and cooling. So if you're comparing gas ducted to reverse cycle ducted, then reverse cycle ducted is going to be a lot cheaper to run because the price of gas has gone up so much. If you are, the other question about whether it's better to have the gas ducted heating or multiple inverters on at the same time, I would say multiple inverters on at the same time will still be cheaper for a range of reasons, but mainly because gas, the way gas heats is it burns gas to create heat, and it can never be more efficient than about 90% of that value of energy, because it's burning gas, which creates heat, and some of it's lost along the way. So it's always limited, whereas the reverse cycle air conditioning is literally giving you maybe 4 or 5 times more heat energy than the energy that's being used to create that. So there's quite a lot of, actually, if you look up on YouTube, myth busting the, I think it's called Myth Busting the All Electric Home. It's another YouTube episode by Renew, which is a not-for-profit organisation, and it's really great at explaining all sorts of things about the comparison between gas and electric and costs and energy and emissions and that sort of thing. Anyway, I shall keep going, and we've got more time though to answer more questions. I'm going to talk next about heat pumps. This is another graph from Sustainability Victoria that, like I said, it's a great idea to go and have a look, and it compares all of the different kinds of heating. This was updated quite regularly, quite recently in July 23. So it does incorporate a lot of the rises in pricing for both gas and electricity. And what it's showing is that if you look for the annual cost, then the most efficient type of hot water you can have is a solar hot water system with an instant gas boost. However, that doesn't take into account a couple of things. One is that a lot of us are wanting to move away from gas, partly because the price keeps going up and also because it's a fossil fuel. The other thing is that it's not taking into account the way people are using solar in their homes, solar generated energy. So you can see, sorry, I'll just show you what I mean. So this is the solar hot water system with a gas boost. The next most efficient option is a heat pump, which is the question that someone asked just before. We'll keep talking about that. But a heat pump, the beauty of a heat pump is that you can time them to heat while you're generating solar energy if you have panels on the roof. And this isn't taking that into account. So if you take that into account as well, I'd say it would end up being a lot cheaper than a solar hot water system. And not only that, it's electric, so that you don't have to have a gas supply. And if you can cut off your gas supply, you save the $1 a day service charge roughly. So there's other savings that I think aren't incorporated in this. Just quickly, a solar hot water system is different to solar panels in that a solar hot water system is literally using the sun to preheat your water, which is then stored in a tank, which might be like this one on the roof. That's hot water stored in the tank, or it might be in a tank like this at the side of the house. And then whichever one of those you have, the water gets boosted to the right safe temperature by either electricity or gas. And that's the way they work. With a heat pump, we're back to the heat pump technology. The reason they're so efficient is because they're not generating heat with the energy they use. They're just using it to pull heat out of the air. They can pull heat even out of 0-degree air in the middle of winter. And so that makes them a really efficient option. If you're choosing a heat pump, you'll probably see that there are 2 main configurations. One is called the all-in-one or integrated system, and that's this one. Now, this bit on the top is the condenser unit. It's this, but just attached into the top of the tank. Some people might choose this as an option because they just have one spot where their old gas storage system was, for example, and they need their heat pump to fit in the exact same spot. On the other hand, someone might choose one like this because perhaps they had, say, an electric hot water system tank like this in an indoor cupboard, in which case they could technically put this tank in the indoor cupboard and this part would have to go outside, but then at least their tank is in the same spot that it used to be. So there's a bunch of reasons why you might choose one or the other. And really you want to get a heat pump specialist to talk you through what's going to work best for your home. But so to answer, I'm trying to remember whose question that was. It was Anne-Marie's question. To answer your question, Anne-Marie, heat pump hot water systems are a fantastic idea. The problem with them has been that because there have been rebates, as often happens when we get rebates, we end up getting the not always great quality products that come on the market, and it takes a little while for the government to sort of fix loopholes and change things so that those things aren't available. So if you've heard negative things about heat pumps, my guess is that it will be these ones that are free or quite cheap. They're available, and if you're getting cold called or people promoting them on Facebook or anything like that, chances are it's these ones. I would personally just avoid anybody that contacts you to get a heat pump, because I think all of the higher quality heat pump installers and suppliers are already so busy they don't need to cold call. If I was getting a heat pump, I would go for one that's either mid-range, which is about $2,000 or $2,500 out of pocket after the rebates, or the really highly efficient ones, which are more. If you can afford to do that, that's great, but if you can't, the mid-range one is still fine. All those three levels of heat pump get exactly the same rebate. So don't let anyone tell you that the reason theirs is free or cheap is because they have the Victorian government rebate. All of them have the rebate. It's just that the value of the unit is different to begin with. And so once you take the rebate away, there's a different amount that's left for you to pay. The more high quality the unit is, it'll have longer warranties, it will run much quieter, you'll probably get a much better installation, and if anything goes wrong, you'll be able to call people back. It might have a less environmentally damaging refrigerant, or a refrigerant that isn't being phased out. You don't want to get one that's got a refrigerant that we're not going to be using in a short amount of time. So they're just all things to think about. The other thing with heat pumps is just that they're a little different to install than a regular hot water system, like a regular gas hot water system. So it's unlikely, if your system breaks and you just ring the local plumber who installed your last gas system, it's unlikely that they'll be able to put in a heat pump. So you're better off, if you think that's going to happen, looking around, figuring out what heat pump you might like, and contacting them, getting them to come out, have a look, where would it be, where would they put the tank, all that stuff. And that way, when it breaks, you're not caught out, and you can just, you know, you already know what the plan is and you know what you're going to get. Okay, well, I'll stop talking about heat pumps. Efficient hot water tips. One of the simplest things you can do is just to make sure your shower flow is not too high. And that's one of the items in the kit you can use for that. I'll be explaining the kit and how it relates to all this in a moment. The other thing is making sure all the pipe work that goes from your system into the house is lagged or insulated. That black stuff is insulation, and it's just called lagging. I don't know why. But when they install, say, a new heat pump, this all should be beautifully insulated. Technically, what if you were building a new house, they would insulate it all the way inside through wherever, right to where it comes out at the bathroom or the kitchen. In an older house, that's a little bit harder, but at the very least, they can do it up to the wall. With plug-in appliances, there's a basic rule of thumb, which is anything that is manufactured after 2012 is going to be a lot more efficient than anything from before. And the reason is because all major electrical appliances from 2012 have to have a star rating and they have to meet minimum energy standards. So if you've got a fridge, for example, that was manufactured after 2012, then I wouldn't be suggesting you immediately go and, replace it. But if you have one that you know is, say, 30 or 40 years old, even if it's working perfectly, that technology is not going to be as good. Now, fridges and freezers are also heat pumps, just like reverse cycle air conditioners and heat pump hot water systems. They're all the same technology, and they've all just improved out of sight in the last 10 years or so. So that's why it matters to have a newer one, and it really could save you a significant amount of money. One way to think about appliances is, so first of all, that 2012 date, anything newer than that is better. The other thing is you want to choose the smallest item that will suit your needs. And that relates in with the star rating. So if, say, the star ratings were introduced to just help us get a better idea of how to compare different appliances with each other, but it only works for the same type or size or function. So, for example, if you, first of all, you think, okay, how big does my fridge need to be? I reckon I need a 300 litre fridge. Then you can go to the energy rating website and you can look at 300 litre fridges, and then any star ratings you see, that's a comparison of how well that fridge rates. So you could choose the highest star rating as you can for a 300 litre fridge. But you can't look at a 300 litre fridge that's 3-star and a 600 litre fridge that's 3-star and think they're the same, because they're not. They're a different quantity. So hopefully that makes sense. It's only like for like that the star rating works for. After the fixed appliances, the heating, cooling, lighting, hot water, usually fridges and freezers are the next most energy using appliance, unless you have a pool, of course, that's a whole different thing. But just for plug-in appliances, then washing machines and clothes dryers can be a really big one, but there is now a heat pump clothes dryer on the market that's actually very energy efficient. So if you are a family that finds you really need to do a lot of clothes drying, if you can afford to get a heat pump clothes dryer, that will save you a lot of money. So using the toolkit in terms of appliances, here's what we can do. We're still on that thermal imaging camera just for a tiny bit longer. And what it can do is help us work out where we might be generating or losing energy without really knowing it. And this image at the top is a good example. It looks like an old stereo system or something, but you can see that it's showing this big patch of light, and that means that it's on standby power. And even if that's not being used, it's using energy and it's creating heat. So the simple fix for that is to put a standby power saving switch in, or just turn it off at the wall, and therefore you've saved energy. This is another example where you've got that an outdoor, a hot water system, and you can see here that a lot of heat is being lost through the pipes. So that would be a way that you could spot the need to lag some pipes. Of course, the other way to do that is just to look at the pipes and see if they're lagged, or even feel them. And if you can feel that there's a hot pipe, it probably needs a bit of insulating. Some other, this tool that's in the kit it might seem tiny, but it's actually so useful, because it has the ideal summer and winter temperatures listed on it. And so you can get a feel for how you should be heating and cooling, but also the ideal fridge and freezer temperatures. Sometimes you might find out that your freezer is 3 degrees colder than it needs to be, so you can change it, and that's going to make it run more efficiently. Now, the PowerMate Lite, there's a whole guide in the toolkit of how to use this. It's possibly the most complicated of the items, and there's a YouTube video that I found that I think Anita might be able to share in the chat as well, or on the, I'm not sure where, but somewhere that everyone can see. It's got a really good visual guide where they talk you through every step. They're like, okay, now you press this button, now you do this. So really what you want to do with the PowerMate, see this plug here? Say if you want to measure how much energy your fridge uses, say if you inherited one of those 30-year-old fridges, you unplug the fridge, you plug this plug in, and then you plug the fridge back into the top of it. Then you press the run button and you clear any old data, and then you press run. And with a fridge, because they are constantly cycling on and off, you really need to leave it for, say, 24 hours, or at least overnight, but 24 hours is a better bet. And it will show you then how much energy that fridge has used, well, is using per hour, per quarter, and per year. And you can toggle between how much energy it's used or how much money it's costing you, because this has the ability to set whatever you're paying for a kilowatt hour. So you can choose which way you want to look at that. But it could give you a really indication with an old fridge of what it's actually costing. And some old fridges might be costing you more than $1,000 to run for a year. And sometimes they're just people's beer fridges, you know, that are out in the garage. If you can figure that out, it might be a really good motivation to get rid of it, or just to downsize it to something way smaller and way newer. The water flow measuring cup. There's instructions on how to use that too, but basically you run your taps and you adjust the handles until the water stays at an even level, and then these markings around the side tell you how much water flow that is. And if it's too high, you can put aerators or flow restrictors onto your taps. With a shower flow, you can use this, but I actually think an easier way is just to do it get 2 people, turn on the shower, have a bucket, get someone to time you holding the bucket under the shower for 15 seconds, and then turn off the shower and measure out how many litres of water are in the bucket and times it by 4. And that will give you a really good indication of how many litres a minute your shower uses, and you want to aim for 7 to 9 litres. If your shower's using 30 litres a minute, you could save a lot of money by not having to heat all that hot water. Okay, and just like with the house, you don't need to wait to get the toolkit. There are other ways you can spot some of this, and one is, like I said, just looking. This pipe work, it's got a little bit of sort of insulation there, but it's not insulated anywhere else, so that's something you could do. Anything that has a standby switch, you could find that and turn that off. And you can also look up the energyrating.gov.au site, choose your group of appliances, say clothes washers, then put in the model number, and it will show you how much energy that item uses. As long as it's from 2012 on, it'll show you how much energy it will use, and you can potentially compare it with something else that you might be thinking of, and you might say, well, I might save $300 a year if I upgrade to this new appliance, and therefore it'll pay me back in 2 years, so I'm going to do it. All right, that's it for me. I'm going to check now the questions. Okay. What's the best way to seal windows? I'm struggling with cold air entering the house through doors and windows, and I really sympathise because that can be such a big problem. What I would suggest is you go to the EcoMaster website and just have a look at all of the things, all of their free videos, because they give a really good demonstration of what you can do for all different kinds of windows. It's hard for me to say because it's different if they're aluminium or if they're timber, if they open sideways, if they open up, if they open out. Every type of window is a little bit different. So I think that would be a good place to start, to try and identify what's there and what product might work the best. Oh, I don't think there are more questions. Are there any anywhere else? Let me check the chat. Okay. If anyone else has any questions, feel free to write them in the chat, or any of our hosts if you have any questions. The noise generation on the condenser. So, Nimel, is this a condenser for an air conditioner or for a heat pump hot water system? I'm guessing it's one of those two. The better quality units won't be as noisy, but I realise if you already have one, that's not helpful. That's not, unless you can afford to upgrade it. Generally, that's why installers should be fairly careful where they put them, because you don't want to have a condenser unit that's outside your bedroom window, for example, or the bedroom window of your neighbour. I'm not sure if there are ways to reduce the noise, unless it's a matter of servicing it to make sure it's running well. But if it's not to do with that, I think the noise is just unfortunately what it is. A heat pump hot water system, yeah. I'm guessing it's probably reasonably new, only because heat pump hot water systems are a more recent event, and I'd say it's just what it is. The really expensive ones are pretty much silent. You can't hear them, and that's unfortunately the difference with all the different models. There is a, if you know, there's a Facebook page called My Efficient Electric Home, and on that they actually have an Excel sheet that lists all of the different heat pumps, and it compares them on a range of aspects, but one of them is noise. So you can look up what the noise generation is and see if that's of importance. You can make a choice with that in mind. But sorry, Nimel, that I probably can't help you reduce the noise of one that's already there. Vibration pads. Do you know what? If you happen to use Facebook, and I know it has its pros and cons, if you look at that My Efficient Electric Home Facebook page and make that suggestion, you'll get people responding who might have done that. I don't know anything about vibration pads, but maybe it's something people have done and it's worked for them. I'm sorry, I can't answer that, but I reckon you'd have a good chance that somebody else might be able to answer that question there. So I can't see any more questions. I'm happy to answer any more that come up.
Okay, thank you so much, Lucinda, for the amazing presentation. I hope everyone is so happy with all the information that she gave it to us. Just regarding the kits, so we have available 3 kits now to be borrowed through the libraries. So we have included a link in the Q&A section where you can click on the link, and then you will be able to, join the line and borrow one of the kits. You will be able to select from where to pick them up, any of the libraries around Wyndham, and to be able to borrow it, you will have to have a library membership. You also will be able to borrow the kit only for 2 weeks, and it cannot be renewed. And if you have any questions or any issues booking the kit online, then you can go to one of the library's branches and just ask one of the staff members to help you to book the kit for you. I think that's all the information that we want to give you tonight. Also, of course, this session has been recorded and it will be shared through email. I will be sending the links that Lucinda has been shared and more information through email, but also the video is going to be available in the Wyndham website and the library's YouTube channel. So just keep in touch. I will be in contact maybe in 1 or 2 weeks with all this information. Thank you everyone for coming and have a good night.